It was Cora who had insisted when he became a teenager that he should bring with him a couple of friends for the summer holidays, not wanting him to be bored of her company. Dear old Cora. She had given him so much, and now he was about to betray her, or so it felt. Would she be spinning in her grave at the thought of what he was about to put in play? He hoped not. He wanted her to understand that this was important to him, that to be happy he had to take this drastic step. When the taxi driver had driven away, Alastair stood on the doorstep, his luggage at his feet. He was visited by a memory from a long time ago, the memory of his 7-year-old self arriving for the summer holidays. It was the first time he was to spend the holiday without his parents, who, as actors, were starring together in a play touring the country. Normally they tried to avoid this happening, but in this instance there had been no avoiding their being away at the same time, and so Cora, a woman not known for her love of children, having none of her own, was approached to take care of Alastair. Initially she had been unwilling, but had capitulated so long as her great-nephew would not interfere with her bird-watching, or any of her other pursuits and daily routines. His behaviour must have met her high standards, for, from then on, she invited him to stay every summer, and always without his parents. "They're busy people, and need time to themselves," she would say. Alastair pushed the key into the lock of the front door, and, in a further attempt to distract himself, he recalled the knee-trembling apprehension he had experienced as a boy that day when the taxi driver had dropped him off that first time. Cora had originally intended to collect him from the station herself, but, for whatever reason, she had changed her mind at the last minute. She had greeted his cautious ring of the doorbell with a pair of binoculars hanging round her neck and the words, "Ah, so you're here, are you? Good. Now then, stow your suitcase over there, go to the lavatory if you must, and then come with me. We haven't a moment to lose. We're off to Ranworth Broad to see some swallowtail butterflies." No sooner had he done as he'd been told than he was being hustled outside and down the sweep of lawn to the boathouse, running at breakneck speed as though their lives depended on it. That was how life was with Cora. Time was of the essence, not a second was to be lost. Life was to be lived to the fullest. Otherwise, as she often said, what was the point? She had been one of the most spontaneous and passionate people he had known, and it was how Alastair had wanted to live his own life. It had not always worked out that way, but now he was determined to follow Cora's advice to the letter. He opened the door and stepped into the large octagonal hall. The spacious and airy entrance always took visitors by surprise, but then the whole house was a clever blend of quirky and traditional Broadland architecture. Closing the door behind him, his heart, his treacherous heart forever prone to nostalgic sentiment, gave a small but unmistakable lurch at the prospect of what he planned to set in motion. Thousands of miles away, his decision had been an act of much-needed liberation. Now, though, as the familiar embrace of the house welcomed him home and reminded him how good it had been to his well-being over the years, that it had always had the power to lift his spirits even when life had felt more than he could cope with, he experienced a shadow of doubt. He dumped his luggage at the foot of the stairs and walked through to the kitchen at the back of the house. He stood at the French doors to look out over the lawn and to Linston Mill on the other side of the river. The 3-story mill was privately owned, and one of the most photographed landmarks along this stretch of the River Bure. Artists flocked to it, too. Originally built as a drainage mill for the surrounding marshland, it had a sense of isolation to it, in that to reach it one had to use a boat from this side of the river. There was the more inconvenient option by which it could be approached, and that was the long way round by road, but that entailed having to leave your car 300 yards away from the mill and take the footpath that snaked its way through a dense copse of trees. As a child, and when Cora had deemed him old enough to do it alone without coming to grief, he had often rowed over to visit the owner of the mill, an eccentric old boy who had been Cora's closest friend.